Hi guitar players, and welcome back to the Guitar Inspiration channel. My name is Maarten, and in Blues Lick lesson number 10 I'll teach you a collection of very cool blues licks and riffs that go over a one-chord blues groove, that chord being E. And you already got a taste of how that sounds in the intro of the video. The primary goal for this lesson will be to teach you how to play this continuous, almost hypnotic blues groove while at the same time playing E minor blues licks on top. That's a lot of fun to do, and these blues licks are classic blues licks that, by the way, also formed the basis of many rock songs in more recent decades. You can navigate through the different sections of this lesson using the timestamps below. First, I'll talk a bit about the time signature, the feeling of this groove. I'll show you the scale we are going to use to build licks. Then I'll show you the basic version of this groove with easy licks. Then we'll start adding bends. Then we'll add some muddy water style trills, and at the end I'll show you how to create licks that imply the A chord on top of the E chord. That's also a very interesting concept. And for those of you that need an extra challenge, I got a variation with a hybrid picking that I will also demonstrate at the end of the video. If you want, you can download the full lesson guide. That's a free download from my blog. There's a link to that in the description. If you like the content, subscribe or like. Any support is very much appreciated. Those of you that want to become a supporter at buymeacoffee.com will find the link in the description too. Okay, grab your guitar and let's dive in. In this first part of the lesson, let me give you a little bit of background on the groove, the chord and the scale we are going to use. Now, the inspiration for this blues lesson comes from early blues artists that accompanied their singing by just one guitar, one instrument that played both the rhythm parts and the lead part. So that's exactly what we are going to do in this lesson. Now, the groove follows a 12/8 time signature, meaning every beat is actually a dotted quarter note that can be subdivided into 3 eighth notes. So you get a triplet feel. A 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And when you group the first 2 eighth notes together, then every beat has a quarter note and an eighth note, and this is the rhythm of our groove. And let me play that for you so you can get the feel of this rhythm and you can memorize it. By the way, don't worry too much about the picking pattern. For now, I'll explain that in the next part of our lesson. Just listen to the groove first. So as you can see, most of our groove is built around a basic E chord. Just a simple run-of-the-mill open E major chord, except maybe for that 3rd fret in the bass. Everything else is part of that E chord. Now, the scale I'm going to use to improvise over that groove is a blues scale. It's the E minor blues scale. And let me pull up a diagram. Here you can see the first 2 positions of that E minor blues scale. That's actually the same as the E minor pentatonic scale, but the blues scale has the blue note, the flat 5 added. And I'm only going to use these first 2 positions to build licks in this lesson. Why only those first 2 positions? Well, I want to stay close to my E chord, so I won't move very high up the neck or I'll get in trouble playing the rhythm part. So I'll use that first position that has open strings, and a bit higher up the neck, I'll use that second position. And let me play through those 2 positions for you. First, that first position with the open strings. And then the second position, and I'll start from the flat 5 here on the 6th fret of the E string. And some of you might say, well, is that possible, improvising over a major E chord with the minor blues scale? Well, from a classical standpoint, from classical music theory, this would be wrong, this would be very weird. But in blues, this is perfectly possible. It's actually part of the sound. So over a major chord or over a major groove, you can improvise using the minor blues scale or the major blues scale, or you can alternate between the two if you want. But for today, we'll only use the minor blues scale. Time to learn how to play our groove. As mentioned previously, everything in our blues groove is centered around the chord E. So first, position your fingers to form a basic open E chord. Our groove starts with the open low E string played with a downstroke, and then the open high E and B strings played together with an upstroke. Then move your third finger to the low E string to play the third fret, that's a G, played with a downstroke, and next is the second fret on the D string played with an upstroke. This is the E again, by the way, so the root but an octave higher than this one. And this little pattern is actually the backbone of our groove in this lesson, and it's a pattern that almost repeats twice in bar 1. Because bar 1 ends with the first little blues lick, a sequence of 3 8 notes starting with the second fret on the A string played with a downstroke, then the open D string played with an upstroke, and then the second fret on the D string again played with a downstroke. And I'm playing these 3 notes with the same fingers I'm using to play the open E chord. So bar 1 goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The groove continues in a similar fashion. Only the ending is different again. So here we have another little blues lick that starts by playing the second fret on the G string with the second finger, picked with a downstroke, and while I'm playing that second fret, I'm also lightly touching on the open B string. So the open B string rings at the same time. What follows is a slide from the second fret on the G string to the 4th fret, so calmly slide from the 2nd to the 4th fret. And that way the pitch on both strings becomes identical. This is a very nice effect. And we're ending bar 2 with another upstroke that hits both the high E string and the open B string. So we're playing a lot of open strings here. And this is, of course, because we're playing in the open position. And playing a lot of open strings originates from acoustic blues, but it translates very nicely to the electric guitar. Let's play the basic groove once more with the rhythm track. Before moving on, just a quick note on the picking pattern. The way I demonstrated the basic groove just now was by mostly using alternate picking, so alternating between downstrokes and upstrokes, and this is usually a good starting point to learn something new. Now you'll notice in the rest of the lesson that I will often let go of that strictly alternating pattern, and I feel that this is possible here since we're playing in a slow tempo. It's a slow blues. It's not fast rock or shred guitar where economy picking is very important. So we can be a bit more free with the picking pattern. Moreover, I feel that In a slow blues, repeated downstrokes, for example, can add power to certain parts of a blues lick and help to emphasize certain parts of that lick. So do experiment with the picking pattern yourself. I settled on a picking pattern for each of these licks. You will see it on the tab, notated, and I will explain it and show it to you in detail. Okay, let's move on and start adding some classic blues bends to our groove. Our groove hasn't changed much here, so you'll notice that the beginnings of both bar 1 and bar 2 are almost identical to what we played previously. The only difference being that quarter step bend we're now adding to that 3rd fret on the low E string. Quarter step bends, that's a technique I already covered in some of my previous blues lick lessons. They're done by just, in this case, gently pulling the string downwards. So we're not aiming for the G flat, it's easy to overdo it. We're just gently pulling the string downward to look for a pitch that is between the G and the G flat. That's a quarter step bend. Small detail perhaps, but I find it to be a nice addition to our groove, especially in this part of the lesson that is all about bends. The licks we're playing in between our groove are also at the end of each bar, like before. And let's take a look at that first blues lick at the end of bar 1. Bend the 2nd fret of the G string, half a step up. I'm bending with my 3rd finger, supported by my 2nd and 1st finger for some extra strength. And notice the bending direction now is up. For the quarter step bend it was down. And I'm also hitting the muted D string while I'm playing this bend, so I'm not only hitting the G string, I'm attacking both strings, the very powerful downstroke, and because of that muted D string you get an extra percussive effect. This is a typical blues technique. The pitch we're aiming for is this one here. This is the blue note or the flat 5. Once reached, release the bend and then pull off to the open G string. We're ending the lick with the 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, played with another downstroke. This is a classic blues bend here in this open position. And you can interpret the rhythm on the chart a little bit more freely. I like to stay on that upslope of the bend a little bit longer than the rhythm would allow you to. So I guess use your gut to play these licks, it's blues. Then we're in bar 2. So bar 1 goes like this, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There are many ways to bring variation to these licks. You could, for example, bend the G string a full step instead of a half step to give it more of a major vibe. Or you could change the timing of the lick, and that's what I did at the end of bar 2. So the blues lick at the end of bar 2 is almost identical to the one at the end of bar 1, only the timing is different. Because in bar 1 it starts on beat 4, in bar 2 it starts a little bit later, 1/8 note later. So on beat 4, in bar 2 we're playing the open E string first, and then I'm playing a faster version of the lick. So we have less time to play the entire lick, so that's why the rhythm is different. We have to play it a little bit faster. As you can see, it's all 16 notes now. But I like to preserve the picking pattern. So although it's all downstrokes and you may find this a little bit uncomfortable, I find it uncomfortable to add an upstroke here on that bend, for example. That doesn't work for me. So that's why I like to preserve the picking pattern. But other than that, it's the same lick. It's only played a little bit faster in a shorter amount of time. So bar 2 once more, a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So let's play that bend, that entire groove, the second part of our lesson once more with the rhythm track. And pay special attention to your picking dynamics, meaning don't just play everything evenly loud. Remember, we're playing two parts here. We have that rhythmic bass layer, that groove, and on top we're playing these blues licks. And we want these licks to stand out, to be more present than that groove. And that's also why I wrote that curly F on the tab. That means forte, that's an Italian music term. That means play loud. So we have to play these blues licks louder than that groove that has to be a bit more in the background. Now, one way to achieve this effect is just by picking the string harder. But what also helps is to dial in your amplifier just below its breakup point. So if you play soft, you're below that breakup point and you will sound almost clean. When you pick harder, you will go over that breakup point and your amp will start to compress more and add overdrive. So these licks will not only be louder, but they will sound fatter than the rest of what you're playing. Let me demonstrate by just playing that bend. I have my amp set just below its breakup point, so if I pick soft, it's almost clean. It's not completely clean, there's a little bit of grain. Now let me pick harder. See? No extra pedals. It sounds louder, but also fatter. And the amplifier adds overdrive because the pick attack makes for a stronger signal, so the amp goes over its breakup point. So be aware of these dynamics and they will really help you to bring out the emotion that a slow blues deserves. On that same E chord groove, now we're getting even more creative with more pull-offs, hammer-ons, and a classic open position trill. In bar 1, after that little quarter step bend, play the open E string again, play it with a downstroke and play it short, assertive, and slightly palm muted. So place the palm of your picking hand right before the bridge to mute the sound. Next is that trill, a series of rapidly alternating hammer-ons and pull-offs. From the open D string to the second fret of that D string, I'm starting with the open D string picked with a downstroke. And I'm playing that trill with my third finger, although you could play it with your second finger, but personally I prefer the third finger for these trills. So 2 downstrokes in a row. To me this feels better than a down and an upstroke. It also works, but again it feels better to play 2 downstrokes for me. And make sure when you're playing that trill, you're lifting the palm mute. So the D string can ring. And you can play that trill during the entire duration of beat 3 in bar 1. On beat 4 we have a similar lick as we played earlier in the video, but this time with a hammer-on from the open D string to the 2nd fret of the D string. So a similar hammer-on as we played in our trill. First, play the 2nd fret on the A string with a downstroke. That's my 2nd finger. Then the open D string, this time with an upstroke. Hammer on with your 3rd finger again to the 2nd fret of that D string. And don't rush, these are 3 eighth notes equal in duration. So all together, bar 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. In bar 2, our groove continues. But here we're adding another hammer-on from the open D string to the 2nd fret. And this time our open D string is a grace note, so a very short note. We're not staying on that note, making it a very quick hammer-on. Then we're back to the open E string. And bar 2 ends with another classic E minor blues lick. And first we're playing a set of 2 quick hammer-ons. First from the open A string to the 2nd fret. Downstroke that is. And then from the open D string again to the 2nd fret. And that's an upstroke. So quick hammer-on on the A string with the 2nd finger. Quick hammer-on the D string with the 3rd finger. We're ending bar 2 with that little triplet pattern that has the blue note in it. So first play the open A string with an upstroke, hammer on to the 1st fret of that A string, then pull off again to the open A string, and then with a downstroke and your 3rd finger, play that 1/4 step bend again on the E string. So that final lick in bar 2. So bar 2 together goes like this. And now let's repeat both bars with the rhythm track. If you find that certain parts of this groove, of these licks, are difficult to play, for example that trill, I often see students that find these trills challenging. Well, then I would suggest to isolate this problem and practice it by itself for some time. So isolate the problem, the trill for example, from the rest of the groove and practice it by itself. And if you feel after a while it's going better, you have more control over the motion, it sounds better, you have developed more strength in your finger, then you can start practicing it again into the wider context of the groove. So don't worry to put the groove aside for a while and to practice small problem spots, and then after a while put everything back together. Okay, time for the final section in our lesson, and here we're going chord hopping. And here I will show you how to play a lick that hops from the E chord to parts of the A chord and then back to the E chord. I guess you noticed that this blues lick is a lot longer than the previous ones. It even hops over that middle bar line. It has a syncopated rhythm and it makes use of a lot of double stops. So we're playing two strings at the same time. And since we are going to imply the A chord here, most of these double stops are small parts of the A chord. For example, this double stop is part of that basic open A chord. Or this double stop is part of an A7 chord with the flat 7 on top. So this gives us some harmonic movement. We're moving away from the E chord to the A chord, and then we're going back to the E chord from this double stop to this one, indicating we're back home to the E chord. This is a very nice resolution, especially because this G sharp here, first fret on the G string, isn't part of the minor blues scale, so it's a very significant sound. We're not forgetting about that blues scale, by the way. We're still thinking about it, only we're having a more chord-based approach here. Let me show you how to play this final version of the groove. In bar 1 you can recognize our now familiar groove around the open E chord. A 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And by the way, I switched to the neck pickup of the guitar for a warmer blues tone. In the end of bar 1, we're implying the A chord, actually the A7 chord, for the first time with this very interesting double stop. Place your second finger on the second fret of the B string and your third finger on the third fret of the E string. Pick these two strings together with a downstroke and then bend them a little bit up. And bend a little bit faster with the B string than the E string, so your fingers don't get in each other's way while bending. End bar 1 with picking the open E string with an upstroke and then the B string with a downstroke. And this is a syncopated rhythm, meaning we're staying a little bit longer on that bent double stop. So bar 1 goes like this, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I did a little mute there after that bent double stop with the palm of my picking hand. In bar 2, we're starting with a slide. Slide your third finger from the 3rd to the 5th fret on the B string, while at the same time picking the open E string. So a similar trick to the one we played before. And again, we're playing a syncopated rhythm here. After that slide, play the 3rd fret on the B string with your first finger, and then the 4th fret on the G string with your second finger. 3rd fret on the B string, that's an upstroke. 4th fret on the G string, that's a downstroke. And for that slide, place your sliding finger quite vertical so the open string has room to vibrate. So these two syncopated rhythms after each other. Again. Next is a classic move to again outline the A chord. Play the 2nd fret on the B and G strings. There's another double stop, and as you can see, I'm barring the 2nd fret with my 3rd finger, and I'm also covering the D string because that note follows next. And this is obviously an A chord. End this group of 3 notes with another double stop, playing the open B and G strings. And then rapidly perform a hammer-on with your first finger to the 1st fret of the G string, emphasizing that G sharp, the major 3rd of the E chord. And this clarifies to the listener that we're back home on the E chord. So this is a classic move from the A to the E chord. guess you recognize this sound. I'm playing this group of 3 notes with all downstrokes, although you could play it with alternate picking if you like. But I prefer 3 downstrokes in a row. Then a little piece of our groove again. And we're ending bar 2 with a quick sliding back and forth from the 2nd fret on the G string to the blue note, the 3rd fret here, and back. And then pull off to the open G string. And then people that follow lesson number 9 may recognize this move. So bar 2, a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. For those of you that are still up for an extra challenge, I have one trick left up my sleeve that is a hybrid picking. Like I announced in the intro of the video, I would show you a variation with hybrid picking. That means picking with the pick and the fingers of the picking hand. The technique I, by the way, covered in detail in Blues Lick lesson number 9. Earlier in this lesson, I said that we were playing 2 roles. We were playing rhythm, we were playing blues licks on top of that rhythm, but we were actually never playing those 2 parts at the same time. And maybe you will say that's impossible, you can't play 2 parts at the same time. Well, the early blues masters overcame this problem by finger picking everything, so they could with some fingers play the licks, and with the thumb they could play the bass, and they could continue playing that bass below the blues licks. Now with hybrid picking, you can achieve a similar effect. So I want to show you one last variation on that chord hopping groove where I play a hybrid picking. So with my pick, I can continue playing a bass note on each beat, and you could play the E on each beat. I chose the E and the A on some of the beats because we're implying the A chord. And with the other fingers of my picking hand, I'm plucking the strings to play the licks on top. And that way we can achieve this effect of playing these 2 parts at the same time. It's a lot of fun to play this. It's a very cool effect when it works. So if you're up for a challenge, please do try it. That concludes Blues Lick lesson number 10. We've covered a lot of ground today, and as a practice suggestion, I would say when you grab your guitar and you want to practice this material, start with the groove in E. When that basic groove gets going, start adding the licks we've learned on top, and then start adding your own licks. Start improvising using the minor blues scale, for example, and start adding your own licks on top of this groove. And I think with enough inspiration, you could go on for quite a while. This video was also a bit longer than I anticipated, but this is something I already talked about in an earlier video. For blues, I think it's important you see how everything is connected. You hear the full story, you see variations on the same things. So that's why I didn't want to cut this video into 3 parts, for example, and I wanted to keep it as one bigger, longer lesson. So I hope you found it valuable. I hope you learned something in this lesson. If so, give the video a like, that helps me a lot, or subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And those of you that want to become a supporter of the channel, you can donate at buymeacoffee.com. There's a link to that in the description. Also, check out my jam track shop at selfie.com. There's a link to that in the description too. To the people that support me, I say thank you very much. I'm very, very grateful for your support, and let's continue this musical journey together. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.